Hey guys, it's Sam, and today I'm doing a book chat on my favorite kind of characters, the fictional bad boys. So I've been thinking about doing this type of video for a while now, but this is also a video response to Vidka from One Book, One Review. She did a video a couple months back, I think in December, about fiction not being reality and kind of relationships and how to kind of look at them and how sometimes these different destructive relationships are okay and these kind of bad characters are okay, and it was really good. Basically, I really liked it. So I will link that down below, but I also had some more thoughts to add to it because, as I said, I was thinking about doing this video before. Yes, it's a very rambly intro. So I want to talk about bad boys today because bad boys, as you guys may know, bad characters in general are some of my favorite characters of all time. I love the morally gray characters, I love the bad boys on the road to redemption, I just like those complex kind of characters. I kind of want to talk about that and why I like some bad boys and not others, and just my thoughts on bad boys. So I got thinking about this again very recently because I've been on a kick of reading a couple contemporary reads. I have dabbled in the new adult genre, hasn't gone so well, and I kind of want to talk about why, because some of you may know this if you read new adult, but new adult has a very big prevalence of bad boys. New adult is a little bit more mature than young adult, so there's more like sexual themes in there, and it just lends itself kind of to the bad boy character, the jerky guy, the promiscuous guy, all this stuff. And it has really rubbed me the wrong way. And you might be like, you just said you liked bad boys. Yeah, it did. But I don't like contemporary bad boys. So here's the thing. I love bad boys in fantasy, dystopia, sci-fi, paranormal, all those kinds of bad boys. And I think the reason that is, and the reason it boils down to, is we can judge those kinds of characters on a different moral code. They do not stick to our moral code, and they're not real. There's no way that they're real. They're so far apart from us as humans living today that you can't judge them by the same moral code, or at least I don't, and I don't think it's fair to anyway, personally. So let's just start with the bad boys of paranormal and trickle down from there. Vampires. Vampires have been a big thing for a while now. Vampires will always be a big thing. But vampires are interesting, and any kind of like supernatural creature, because typically speaking they're immortal. And when you have an immortal character, you can't judge them by the same moral code as humans who have a smaller lifespan, because their morals get shifted and changed over time because they don't have to worry about dying. A lot of our morals as humans come from the fact that we either have a religion that kind of revolves around death and what happens after death and being a good person and that kind of thing, or just the fact that our morals are kind of structured in the way of we need to be a good person because we only have a certain amount of time on Earth, and we either have to make that relevant because of a religion we have, or relevant because we only have a small amount of time, or whatever. When you have a character that's immortal and doesn't have to worry about that, things get a little skewed and they go a different way, and all of a sudden things that matter before as a human don't really matter as much, and violence becomes more prevalent, all this other kind of thing, because they don't have respect for humans. They're usually violent against humans because all of a sudden it becomes a different kind of group. A lot of things happen in the immortality category. So really, when you have a vampire, like right now I'm thinking of Spike from Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Eric Northman from True Blood, and Damon Salvatore / any of the vampires from the Vampire Diaries. Those characters are hundreds of years old. You can't judge them on the same morals as people who are not immortal, and also people who aren't vampires, who have a whole different set of stuff. I'm not even gonna talk about that, but it's a different moral code for those kinds of characters, because being violent and doing the morally gray kind of thing is more okay for those kinds of immortal characters. Another way that I feel like moral codes kind of shift is war periods and survival periods, which really tend to happen a lot in fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian. So when you have, let's just say dystopian first off, when you are living in a dystopian government, a dystopian world, the worldview changes. Things are very different. You have to do things for survival. You are up against a lot of very conniving and bad people. You have to do some bad things, typically speaking. Like, it's not as black and white as just living in a normal day-to-day thing like we are, where, like, typically speaking, right and wrong, pretty clear cut. I mean, we pretty much know. But when you're living in a dystopian environment, it's not so clear cut anymore. A good example of this is Warner from Shatter, one of my favorite bad boys. I'm wearing the necklace that Sarah Jane made me to match, so pretty relevant. But dystopian society, dystopian bad boy, had to do things that aren't great, made some really poor decisions based on the need to, and the fact that this character probably wouldn't be alive if he didn't make some of the decisions that he made during the book and before the book and stuff. So some people say he's a bad person. I don't think he's a bad person because we don't live in the world that he lives in, so you really can't judge him for that. On that same kind of note, war times. Typically speaking, fantasy books have like a war period going on, or two opposing nations or whatever. So, love me some fantasy bad boys. I can name so many of them. And typically speaking, they're living under a different set of moral codes. One, they're in a world that's not even our own. Two, there's probably magic of some kind that's just running amok and being crazy. What are you going to do about that? Three, there's a war going on. People are dying. Probably going to make some crappy decisions and maybe kill some people and be a little more violent than is necessary for our current world. And I don't think they're bad people for that necessarily. Morally gray? Yes. Complex characters? Absolutely. Do I think that they're bad people because they're doing things that we as civilized people in 2015 wouldn't do? No, because they're under a different set of moral codes than we are. Some prime examples of this are Magnus from the Fallen Kingdom series. Lots of crap is going on in this series. See, really bad person? I don't think so. He can be. I'm not saying that he's like the best person. Again, morally gray, kind of an anti-hero, etc., etc. But we can't put him to our standards because he's dealing with stuff that we would never have to deal with. Another example of this, and some people are going to be like, what? But the Darkling from Ruin Rising. Is the Darkling a good person? No. The Darkling is probably one of my most evil characters on this list of bad boys that I am kind of defending a little bit, but the Darkling would never happen in real life. The reason that I can like the Darkling for who he is and like him as a character and think he's kind of hot and think that he's a really seductive character and kind of ship him with the main characters because he would never happen in real life. There is no person in our modern world, or at all, that controls dark magic and does the things that he does because it's not real. So it's a fantasy. All these kinds of books are a fantasy. They're not real. They're not based in reality at all. So in that way, I don't feel like they're destructive. I don't feel like these bad boy characters are destructive because there's no way they can be real. There's no way that somebody can go out and meet a person like him, a dark magic using world leader, and be like, oh, I'm gonna be with this person because... No, that wouldn't happen because he's not real at all. It's not based in reality at all. And this is why I'm not okay with contemporary bad boys. Because contemporary bad boys are set in reality. And I'm okay with some contemporary bad boys. I'm okay with the guy that's a little more of a fighter. I'm okay with the guy that's a little bit of a jerk. I'm okay with that kind of bad boy. But I'm talking about the extreme end of the bad boy category that, again, I feel like pops up a lot in young adult, honestly. But that just sets a bad example because he could be a real person. A lot of times in these new adult books that I've been reading, and again, I might have just been reading some bad ones, but addiction is romanticized, commitment issues are romanticized, sexism is romanticized, slut-shaming is romanticized, and abusive relationships are romanticized, emotionally abusive relationships. A book that I finished very recently that I'm going to be doing a full book talk and review on was Beautiful Disaster. I know this is a book that brings a lot of conflicting feelings from people, and I can see why. There are people that love it, and that's fine, and I know some of my friends love it, and that's fine. And I feel like this is an extreme example, but the relationship and the love interest in this is so bad and such a horrifying example of what we should be romanticizing. It's one thing to like bad boy characters. I do, obviously. I love bad boys. I've said that this whole video over and over again. This, I feel like, is destructive because if you have a younger reader picking this up and thinking that this is okay and that the relationship of this is okay and that they want a Travis, that's the main character in here, I don't think that's good. It's not a good thing. After reading this book, I actually looked up some domestic violence websites that I use with my work as a social worker and the red flags that you see in relationships for things that you should look out for at the beginning of a relationship for possible domestic violence, emotional abuse, physical abuse, whatever. The main character in this hit like 12 of them. It's not good, and it's not something we should be romanticizing, and it's not cute, and this whole book left me exhausted and just, it's not good. And it's something that I see a lot in new adult. Like I said, I'm not bashing new adult. I'm not. I'm kind of bashing the contemporary bad boy that we're getting recently because it's destructive. It's romanticizing something that should not be romanticized. It's setting a horrible example. teenage girls are at a very extreme risk for domestic violence in relationships and for relationship abuse. So when you have characters in books that younger audiences are reading doing these things and having it being seen as something that's romantic and good and rewarding, and no, that is so not okay on so many levels. This character beat anybody up that talked to his girl before she even started dating him officially. He would tear down her door. He would call her every time he wasn't with her. He would beg her not to leave him. I will do the full review on this. I don't want to get into this, but this is just one example of a contemporary bad boy that I didn't like and that I feel like is destructive and that I feel like you can't suspend your disbelief and you can't be like, oh, that's just a fantasy. You know, like that's just a make-believe, because at this point it's not. And that's the overall problem that I have with contemporary bad boys, is that it's too close to home. They are supposed to be living by our moral code, our modern moral code, and they're not. And they're doing things that are so bad, you know, abusing drugs, which is never okay. Doing drugs, if you want to do drugs, is fine, but romanticizing it in a book about a romance or something, not okay. Violence, not okay. Romanticizing signs of emotional abuse, not okay. And these are things that I see a lot in the contemporary genre when it has to do with the bad boy. And I just want a middle ground. I want like the snarky bad boy who's a bit of a jerk, but who, you know, gets better, gets redemption, that kind of thing. You know, isn't perfect. I don't want perfect characters. Perfect characters are boring. I don't like the perfect good guy either. But this extreme that I'm seeing of these really bad contemporary bad boys is not okay. And I can excuse the bad boys in fantasy, sci-fi, dystopian, whatever, because they have a different moral code. They're living under a different moral code in a different world. We can't subscribe our morals to them. But the contemporaries, we can, because they're living in our contemporary world. And when they break those boundaries, it's not okay, and it's setting a really bad example, and it shouldn't be romanticized, and it really bothers me, obviously. So comment down below and let me know what you think of this topic, what you think of the bad boys, if you kind of say the same way as I do as far as contemporary versus fantasy, everything else bad boys, how you feel about it. If you're interested in more of my thoughts about Beautiful Disaster, as I said, I'm doing a review and discussion about it and more in depth about that particular book. So if you have any comments about Beautiful Disaster or any questions about it, I would recommend you wait until Monday when I'm putting that up so that you can kind of comment on that video, because I'll explain myself more regarding Beautiful Disaster then. But if you have any general comments about contemporary versus non-contemporary bad boys and all of that stuff, let me know. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you disagree with me or if you agree with me, or whatever. I would love to talk to you guys about it. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!